You ever notice how life keeps reminding you that you're really not in control? Like you think you've got it handled. Plans, timing, people, and then something shifts, and suddenly you're right back to square one, wondering if you actually trust what you say you believe in. And that's been me lately. I talk about trust, about faith, but truthfully, I still catch myself holding on too tight, trying to manage every outcome, trying to fix everything before it breaks. And I don't know. Maybe that's the lesson. Maybe faith isn't about figuring it out. Maybe it's about being okay not knowing. And I'm realizing that the more I try to control everything, the less peace I have. And the more I just breathe, trust, and move, the more things start to fall into place. So that's what today's about. Just a real conversation about control, trust, and faith, and what it looks like when you're trying to hold it all together, and what happens when you finally stop trying so hard. I don't know, I just have the ability to just turn it off, which is not healthy because I just don't want to deal with it.
Mhm.
I'm like, I don't even want to think about it right now because what if because I'm going to get the answer I don't want to hear
Sure,
and I don't want to hear it right now.
sure.
And so, but once you do that long enough, the answer ends up coming the next day. And then you're like, ah, man, like why put off the inevitable? Just go over it. And then once I woke up this morning as I was writing and I was talking about, oh, where's my book? Where the hell is my book? And I was talking about trust and control and, how much it can block your peace. And then, what you ultimately have to take to the altar in order to get past it and to sacrifice. And of course, the devotional that I popped open this morning for today was sacrifice at the altar, Genesis 22:2. And when Abraham was commanded to sacrifice Isaac
Yeah.
and put total trust and love in God, and as a result, he didn't, have to sacrifice Isaac, thankfully. It's just funny how the more people try to steer away from the spiritual side of things, the more anxiety and the less control you really have.
Why do you have all those things?
All which things?
All the anxiety and stuff after you don't do what you know is correct.
You didn't turn to God for the answers. You're not
Maybe you did, right?
Or you're
The
not
only
listening. You're not
right, there we
actually
go.
having the ears to hear.
Right.
A lot of times we drown it out. We'll drown it out with noise, whatever the noise may be. It could be chaos in your life. It could be, the million and one thoughts that you have going through where you don't want to stay focused. And you're just, and I take those distracting and intrusive thoughts as definitely the adversary coming in and going, hey, I don't want you to get close to God. I
Well,
don't want you to hear him.
who's the adversary?
Well, Satan.
Well, okay, so what does Satan depict in us?
He'll depict our sin.
Right, so it's not Satan talking to you, it's the sinner in you talking to you. It's the sin you down.
I still believe though that I mean, well, the voice of the enemy is still there.
Right, absolutely. So, one thing I like to point out to some people, especially when they're like asking about sin and God, and I say, well, it's funny because Satan can't directly talk to me. He's not going to come in my ear and have a presence in me. He just doesn't have that ability. But he does have the ability to, from birth till now, and to create a secular world around me that allows me to create those, again, those excuses that I will inevitably, the sinner in me, because that's what I am. He speaks to that sinner, even though he may have spoken it many, many years ago. It's played a part in me today to where instead of Satan talking to me, I'm talking to myself, which clouds my ability to hear God.
That's a very interesting perspective. He was in your head for so long, and those seeds of sin were planted
Right.
that now they just echo,
Right. And they don't
and
seem like sin to you.
well, they really don't. and you don't think about it, and
Right.
that's part of control. The more I think about it, I'm like, man, every single time you allow one of those sins to occur, you are allowing the old you, which is your adversary,
Right.
to come back into play, and you're not going to live a fulfilled life. You're just going to keep bouncing back and forth. You're just a chaos monger. That's what you are. You don't want peace. You thrive in chaos because it's better than fearing the truth.
Yeah.
And as I was starting to think about this control, and you brought it up too, was and you asked me very specifically, like, who's the adversary really? And that's the amount of control that the enemy can have on you at a very early stage, to the point where you're like, okay, it's had its control on me for so long that now it's second nature.
Yeah.
That's where the compulsivity comes from. That's
Y
where the lying comes from, the lack of trust,
Yeah.
the self-doubt. We've seen those macro managing leaders that they're literally doing it out of being control freaks,
Yeah.
and they're so terrified that the truth about them will come out, that they're really kind of a weak individual.
Right.
Um,
Or so they perceive themselves that way.
yeah, yeah,
Right, no, you're absolutely correct. I think it's especially when we're talking about leadership in general, like, if you're coming from the military standpoint. Used to, the military when I first got into it, you too, we had that, like, do what the leader says, like, and just follow that rule set and you'll be fine. And you could run into those leaders that are obviously, doing this out of their own fruition, like, whatever they want done, right? The way they wanna be viewed, the way they wanna do things. And it ultimately, every time I've seen one of those leaders, get put into a position where they get tested either by the unit or by war or by whatever the case is, you're right, they end up failing because everything is a lie, and when it's a lie, you can't it's when you try to control everybody else with your lie, then nobody else can, come to the same conclusion that you're sitting at. So, like, when we were leaders, it was one of the hardest things to ever do is, like, when I made a failure, to come out right in front of my people and let them know, "I've made this failure, and this is how I'm gonna rectify this failure." And I think the problem is a lot of people put this thing into their head, especially when they're in leadership positions or in high positions, that they're not allowed to make mistakes and they're not allowed to have that like nothing's ever wrong with what they do. That's why they're there. And one of the things I found out is you can either be a leader and find yourself in a position just because you have service and time, or you can find yourself as a great leader because you have the experience and the ability to lead. And I only say that in that regard because when I didn't try to pad actuality around my people were able to pad me when things went awry. So if I take blame constantly for the actual failures of my unit or my guys or whatever the case is, my guys are more willing to accept the fact that it was also their fault without me ever having to tell them, and then they will fix themselves because they have respect for the ability for me to do those things in front of them. And I can give that example with when we were in Afghanistan and we were on that compound and I went in there and we were having dinner one night. We used to eat off those like paper trays that dude would give us and
yeah.
whatever case is. So it was like I think we were on a mission that day and we came back and things were kind of super busy and shit. And I remember I was like eating with the guys, but you know how it is, when you're leading dudes, you get like you put your plate down, you do some things, you come back, you take a bite, you know what I'm saying? You're just like always maneuvering, always running around trying to get things. And I think it was either you or Smolensky came by and said something that we needed to do, and I popped up and started getting shit done. Well, I came back, and there was a tray on the ground, and I lost my ever loving nuts. I was like, "Whose effing tray is this?" A and you know me, I'm a stickler for keeping shit clean, not bringing any attention to ourselves, being that elite level. And I was just like, somebody better find. And my guys, they didn't even question it at first. At first, they were like, yeah, who the fuck? What? Like they were just losing it. Like, who is it? Somebody better raise their hand. And I walked away and I was like, you guys got 1 minute to figure out who this was. And so like I walked off, I got my stuff together. I was like, I'm about to just rip everybody to pieces. And I came back and Santos and someone else came up to me and they're like, hey, Sanders. And I was like, yeah, what's up? They're like, and they were kind of hesitant at first, they're like, I'm not sure how to deal with this. And they were like, we think that's your plate. I was like, shit. And then like my brain was like, yo, you were just sitting there and you hopped up to do a bunch of shit. I bet you left your plate there. Right. And so like in that moment, I had the ability to go, no, it fucking wasn't. Like I've heard a million other fucking sergeant staff, sergeant platoon, sergeant PL, so like, no, it can never be me. And in that moment, I just had to take a break for like a whole 30 seconds and look at them and then look at me. And I could see it in their eyes. Like he better own up to this. Not in a like in a ego way, like he better do this piece of shit. They were like, "This is the moment we know Dan to be. Is he gonna be in that moment? Is the trial that's sat in front of my leader, is he gonna pass this trial?" And I had to like bring them all in and be like, "Guys, I am super sorry that I yelled at all of you and it was uncalled for. I didn't have all the information and I made a mistake." And I was like, "That is my plate. I'm the shitbag for this." And then I forget what happened. I'd have to ask Santos and them if I like repaid them or helped them. I don't know exactly what it was. But it was one of those things in my mind where I was like, okay, the next time somebody makes a mistake, it's as an individual, I'm gonna give them not a pass, but we're gonna teach it as a learning lesson. But every time it's a group of people making a mess, I'm gonna fuck them all up because each one of them had the ability to go, hey, you need to do that, right? And that goes into the same exact thing that's a very micro scale or very nano scale. And when we talk about like what you and I were talking about last night, it does go into those things where you're going to lose control no matter what when you're not being honest. You're going to lose control when you can't bring that truth to the surface and deal with it in a proper manner. And that goes even with those things. Like when you start seeking that particular truth, and especially if we're men, right? We're supposed to be leading others. But if we're husbands, we're leading our family. If we're about to be husbands, we're leading our family. And the question goes is, or the thing is God gives us not tests, but there are trials that are set forth in front of us. And just like Moses, he did his trial, just like and all of a sudden my brain's leaving me, but Abraham, no, yep, no. Anyways, don't worry about it. But dude, my brain can't bring up a name all of a sudden. But Isaac was supposed to be at the altar and get killed, but we tend to forget that that what is his name? Please give it to me because I'm already
Abraham?
Abraham. Thank you. Yeah, I was right on thinking that. Abraham already failed that test in the beginning. He already
Mhm.
failed that trial in the beginning. So the gift that was given to Abraham was he did not have to sacrifice his son, and then God gave him an entire nation. And he'll be remembered in a book for eons, right? So
Mhm.
it's like you have a choice right now. Everybody has a choice right now with one of the hardest decisions you ever had to make when it came to truthfulness and leadership and all of those things that you've developed and created and figured out through time. And then you get given these more difficult trials in the future to see if you're prepared for that next great gift that God's going to hand you. And I'll go further onto that just to keep talking. Even when I look at um, those trials, my wife now, she has an ex-husband, and through my life, my mother's had multiple ex-husbands. She's made multiple millions of mistakes. But I remember meeting a very godly man when I was a small child, and he married my mother before he passed away, like maybe 2 years after they were married. And I remember one time my father was my biological father was super angry that I called him dad. And um he didn't I don't remember because I was super young, but I don't remember exactly how my stepfather found out that my biological father was upset about that. But that man who always had a Bible on him and always spoke of God, I remember being super young, maybe like 6. I think I was like 6 or 7 years old. He found out that my father was that upset about it, and he called my father to reconcile that difference. And through that wisdom, which you can, if we read the Bible, Proverbs 1 through 31, it talks about a father's wisdom and so on and so forth. But when we look at those things and I look back at that, that was great leadership. And so now with my now wife and her ex-husband, he showed up angrily trying to, dominate the position in life or whatever the case was, showed up to Hawaii unannounced, said, I'm taking my daughter home with me for 2 weeks and I have no idea how I'm going to get her back. I don't have enough money for that, but you're going to have to deal with it. And I had to like lay my anger down. I'm just coming off of the range. We've been shooting machine guns and rockets for the past 3 days. I'm dirty. I'm ugly. I'm tired. I'm hungry, and I'm ready to fight someone. So I got to the house, and he was standing at the front door, and I just walked past him, and I looked at him, and I said, "I'll deal with you in a minute." And I walked inside, and I probably sat inside for about 45 minutes. I was like calling like specialty lawyers, internet lawyer, like people like, you could spend $300 and I'll tell you what to do, kind of thing. I'm just trying to figure out what the right direction is. And then something just told me, hey, go out there and level with him. Let him know that you're not here to take his daughter away, that you want to help him, but the way we're doing things is not correct. And so that's what we did. We came out there and we just had maybe like a 15-minute conversation on the side of the street. And I was just trying to let him know, like, hey, man, I don't want to take your daughter away from you. I just want to give her a good life. And if I can do that and you and I can work together, we can both create a life, twice as good as what it could have been. And ever since then, he and I have co-parented well. He had to go through his own trials in his own life and stuff like that. But even that building that relationship allowed my church inside my own house, the church I have, my kids, my wife. And with him, it allowed us to have a more copacetic and a better understanding of each other. And now he follows God. I'm following God. We're both in the same alignment. So there is no issues behind it. But he understood that I was going to take that position as a leader and say, it's okay. We're going to do this together. There's no anger involved. And that blossomed into something that there is no measurement for. And that's because I had to come to the truth and say, hey, these are two egos colliding together. And none of that matters. The only thing that matters is this child in front of us. And we need to lead this child so that way she can so that way the mission can be a success and that we're not just destroying each other from the inside until the end of time.
Yeah, it's a really powerful thing, and I've had to do this same thing, and I've been recently within the last, let's see here, since I would say May, maybe it was April, May timeframe. I've been reconnecting with my youngest son, Taryn, um, and his mom had a choice, right? Like, I didn't show up into Taryn's life for, we're going on. He's almost 9 now. By the time we got done with paternity and everything else, and we kind of let it sit for a year because I was like, how do I approach this? One, I haven't talked to his mom, Sydney, in years. What's her sentiments going to be behind this? Um, and we both, thankfully, we're both faith based. Um, and I did not know that about her until her and I got on the phone, and I was just like, "Hey, we should probably really talk about this, and the floor is yours to be able to say what you need to say because your mom, I haven't been there, and you know my son better than I do. So how do we go forward?" And she's like, "We just go forward." She's like, "There's no sense in living in the past, and we can work together to make sure that Taryn has, like, the best life possible," to the point where, and for some men, this would probably irk them, but my son is like, "I've got 2 dads," and he's absolutely true. He's got his biological father, but he's also got the man that's been there for quite some time and that he respects, and I respect that dude. I respect him massively. Um, there's some guys out there that'll be like, "Nah, keep that dude away. He wasn't around. Why let him near?" And, it's not for a lack of trying, it's just the circumstances behind the entire thing. And together, we've been able to work together so easily that there is 0 stress. And to the point where we're almost like friends, but just, you know, just we're friendly. We can make it through conversations. We can have conversations about Taryn. Um, we can work together when it comes to legal things, and I think we surprised the court by showing them how easily we could work together. They're probably like, "These are the 2 easiest people I've ever met." But, we both rely heavily on our faith, and because of that, we were able to go into a co-parenting situation where there was no issues and no animosity. And if there is, neither one of us brings it to the table and we let it go. And there's really no reason to have animosity on my end anyway. So, um, and but not everybody can do that because they want the control. They want control, and, you having that ability to just kinda, like, step back and then be like, "Alright, man, let me go outside and, like, talk to this dude." That's a level of control on your part that, probably took a lot, but, you know, that moment that you were like, "You know what? Let me go out there and let me go see what's up." I mean, could you just imagine if more people can do that? And there probably is a lot of people that can do it, you just don't hear about it. You hear more of the negative aspects of it. And when I talk to people about relationships and whatnot, and I've heard a lot of um, couples that deal with like control and this goes on both sexes. I mean, it's man and woman. Um, and really, what my first question is like, okay, well, which one of you wasn't honest, or was it both of you? Because control really boils down to honesty. Mm, and this plays back into leadership too. An honest leader will not be controlling. They'll put trust in their leaders. Like, I never had to go over and be like, "Hey, Dan, did you do all the fucking shit that I told you to do?" It was like, "Hey, we're ready to rock, right? PCCs, PCIs, we're all good to go. Everybody's good. Check. Raj, let's go. DreamCon 1, let's roll." And that's just a matter of trust. I didn't have to control you. And then you saw other leaders, and we can use Ski as an example, where he didn't have trust in anybody, so he had to have absolute control.
Right.
And you wonder, and Ski wasn't faith based.
No.
Ski was an atheist.
Yeah.
And, which that takes a whole lot of faith to be an atheist. I mean, it takes a whole lot of belief to believe in nothing.
Right, you gotta believe in God so much that you don't believe in God.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense.
Remember that he wouldn't let us no prayers before? No prayers before?
Oh, no, I don't remember that, I just sat praying. Like,
Yep. I remember, getting the truck crew together before we rolled, and I was like, "Hey, man," that day that, my truck hit the IED and all hell broke loose, the, I brought the group together and I was like, "Hey, man, I'm just gonna do a quick prayer over us," and, um, that day we all walked away fine, and but he had so much control that he didn't want us even doing that, so it makes you wonder what he really feared. What was the real fear out there?
yeah.
And he was an interesting character, he really was. Part of him wanted to care, but in the same sense, it was like, if I show that I actually give a shit, I'm gonna look weak.
Yeah, he got to us before we were doing, like, combat training or after we were doing combat training. 'Cause I
Yeah, he came fresh off the trail.
Yeah, he came fresh off the trail, so he still had that mindset to not trust like, because like he said himself, "Don't trust Joe, Joe will always fuck you," right?
Mm,
Which is technically true, but, I've really not had one Joe totally fuck me, you know what I'm saying? Like, now we said we can talk about Maori when he left that saw barrel up there on the mountain, but, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, sooner or later they will fuck me, but on that note, is my job to never get fucked by Joe, or is my job as a leader to create and maintain the best fighting force on planet Earth? And so, if I look back at that moment where I trusted my Joes not off firsthand, but because I had worked with them for so long that I knew that I could trust them. But that's also can't go into that idea of like, I'm not going to make mistakes as I've watched staff sergeants lose their nods in the middle of combat deployments. So I worked with an SF guy one time. He got off the helicopter with us and he was staring at a wall, bitching about how he couldn't see shit out there. And then we were like, dude, you're staring at a fucking wall. How are you in the SF? How do you not know how to use your nods? So, when I take all those things into my thought process, yeah, leadership like that, like, tends to bind the hands of the people around you, and then, that doesn't allow them to, freely think and have free will and actually be led by you. It's just controlled by you. And you can do that same thing in your family. It happens all the time, trying to control the family's outcomes. Um,
Yeah.
you can look at the studies, psychological studies of kids. It doesn't matter whether they're poor or they're rich. It's when their parents have this ideal of what their child should be because they never were that thing. So they gotta make sure their child gets to that level instead of letting their child freely develop and go, okay, well, you don't enjoy the thing that I love so much, which is baseball. We'll just put that into the frame. And you like these parents force their kids into baseball for like the past 7 years. Your kid hasn't even enjoyed baseball anymore. They really enjoyed this, but you never gave them the opportunity to do so. And then you start creating, like, resentment in your employees or your children or your wife or whatever the case is, because you have expectations of them, and when they don't meet those expectations because you couldn't either, then you're pissed off at them, but you're not pissed off at them, you're technically pissed off at yourself. But you take all those things out on them instead of just letting things unfold because you have trust in your abilities, you have trust well, if we go back, when I have trust in God that he's positioned me in position I'm supposed to be in, and I'm not letting my sinful thought process take over or my fears of self-doubt and all these other things that take over. And those things do bleed into your marriages. Those things do bleed into your relationships at work, at home, with friends, even with yourself. They all bleed into those things and cause you to be a control freak. And then
Mhm.
you can't control nature. You can't control the earth. You can't control human beings. You can't do any of that stuff. But what you can do is control yourself. And then when you are the epitome of self control, then people around you tend to control themselves too.
Yeah. It's amazing the energy that you put off when somebody sees a person that can maintain full control of themselves. They have total bearings. And, you know, eh, coming out of the military, typically we'll lose it. We'll lose that bearing. And it'll take a while and we'll be like, why is my life going to shit? Well, you lost your sense of self-control and you let all your teachings just go right out the window and you're like, I got a DD-214. I'm free
Yeah.
and I'm going to do whatever the hell I want to do. Well, yeah, you can do that, but you're going to there's a consequence to it. And when you've brought this up and how much control can lead into other things. And I think the first thing, we've got to try and understand what we're really trying to control, you know, like what we're trying to control, why we're trying to control it, and why are we trying to control others? And, whether that's, what are we dealing with, right? Is it a relationship that you're trying to control? And I ask that because I've tried to control a relationship and it does not work out very well. It doesn't work out well. It's the same thing as trying to control your kids. They will defy you. And, you know, and that's the only reason why I ask this because I've done it. And and I'm not trying to tell anybody to leave like their person or anything like that if they're in one of these super controlling relationships, but it should show up as a big red flag that there's something going on.
Yeah.
There's something going on,
Well,
and a conversation needs to be had.
what is control? That's my real question is control always offensive or is it defensive?
Depends on the situation.
Right. Because in my first marriage, I was a control freak. And then my ex-wife would tell everybody, he's so controlling and this, but I wasn't controlling in the way that she would tell people I was in control. I was
Mhm.
controlling I was controlling the relationship because from a defensive position, because I was like, I need to hold on to this relationship. I need to not lose this relationship. So I'm going to lie about everything. I'm going to do things certain ways to try and hold on to this. and those things were my type of control. So if I didn't speak my mind, I knew that things would be easier. If I didn't do this, I knew things would be easier. If I did that, I knew. So I just kind of appeased the other person in the relationship and never gave my actual self to that person because I wanted to control the outcome, which was marriage, kids,
Mm.
die, same married to the same person, never have a divorce like my father did, never follow down that same path. And I feel like, from my perspective, my father did the exact same thing with my mother. He controlled the marriage, but he controlled it through avenues that created resentment in him. The same way I did, like just let her do whatever she wants and just go with the flow and just like, appease that person. And that's how I'll control her leaving me or staying.
You're
No,
not doing it out of love.
hell no.
I look back at, the mistakes that I made, and my controlling was out of, like, selfishness.
Yeah,
It
definitely.
was, "I want my cake and I wanna eat it too." I but I didn't wanna let that other person go because there was a certain amount of comfort that came with it. And that right there, I mean, it's a form of abuse. And, it's really difficult for me to say openly, but and I've had it done to me, and it's no excuse to do it to others, but it's not love. You're
Right.
not showing love at all.
Yeah.
It's not love. It's done out of, and this is where I was gonna kinda lead into this, because this does fall in line with leadership, and you had brought it up too. It's our responsibilities in our relationships, um, especially if you're in a relationship. I don't like to use the term dating anymore because either you're in a relationship to get married or you're you're just out there playing the field. Like you're just out there having fun.
Yeah.
And if we're looking at a biblical sense, one, it's definitely a big no-no. You and I talked about this yesterday, uh, and what's right and what's wrong. And of course, anything that's done outside of, um, what God has intended for us is definitely wrong. But the amount of self-control that you can have, if you can have that in a relationship where you can abide by, God's commandments, that amount of control and the blessings that come with it, you know, I don't know what those look like. I have no idea. I've been told that there's, blessings beyond further than I can see,
Yeah.
right? And but there's that selfishness, the sinful nature of me wanting to have that control over my life instead of letting him have the control.
Right.
And where I'm like, no, I believe, but I want my cake and I want to eat it too.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's why I think it's very important that people, when they're looking at relationships now, like you got all these dating apps out there. You've got, I mean, gee, pretty much any kind of dating app you could ever imagine now. Um, you no longer need Craigslist. The
Right.
and all these people that are out there just kind of playing the field. And me years ago, I would say, have at it, be fun, do whatever, YOLO, live life. Matt, 41, about to be 42 now, is like, no, absolutely not. Like, do not run down that road of, I'm just going to lose myself and I'm going to do whatever I want because it will lead to certain destruction. And that'll be the first signs that you have no self control. You will give in to, like, you're 100% just going to continue to keep giving into the flesh.
Yeah.
You will have a very difficult time being faithful in a relationship, because you're not going to trust anybody. You're just going to assume every woman you come across, or man, and depending on which if you're like a woman looking for a dude, dude looking for a woman, whatever. Every person you're going to come across, you're not going to trust. And then when you get into that relationship, you're going to try and control them because you know how the relationship spawned.
Right.
It's like, and it's also just like a relationship spawning out of infidelity. If somebody cheats and leaves their significant other or steps out on that marriage, cheats, one, you don't love the other person. What you do, you just don't love them enough not to do that to them. I don't buy the whole you don't love them. It's that you did something wrong. You didn't approach some shit and you were not being a man and you did not have self-control to go and talk to them. And I'm telling you this from a standpoint of me doing that exact thing. Like I had no self-control. I didn't care. And that is probably the most narcissistic thing you could possibly ever say. Did I have remorse for it? Yes. But the lack of self-control is what just continued me down that path. And sure, I could blame it on like, I needed to feel alive or whatever excuse you want to come up with. What
Well, I so the moral of that story is 100%. If you rely on controlling others, then you lack trust and faith. But if you have faith and trust in God and you release control, all things will come to you naturally from where they are, if they're meant to be there. So the problem with love is, and even in today's time and age, we can drive down the street, you can see these people's rainbow flags up on their yards. And love is love, but love is not love. You can't define something by using the same word. That doesn't make any sense. But the first piece of love is self-sacrificing. And
Mm.
you can't control anybody else or even control yourself if you're not willing to self-sacrifice. And that goes into, when's the last, and I'll ask anybody this, when's the last time you looked at your significant other, or let's just say you're younger or whatever the case is, and you're looking at someone you're about to marry or looking at someone you're about to sleep with or whatever the story is. When you look at that person, do you, at any given time before you decided to go and do premarital things, whatever the case is, did you ever look at them and be like, what's best for them? Because the problem is we start putting so much trust in ourselves, even though we talk down to ourselves on a daily basis and think we're nothing but garbage half the time. So if I can't even trust myself to have the ability to have love for another, then everything I do is uncontrolled. If that makes sense.
Mhm.
Um, because my feelings and the things I need today will not be the same feelings and things I need tomorrow. So it doesn't really matter when we talk about love, like controlling myself, because none of that needs to be applied. I don't think. What needs to be applied is am I having a self-sacrificing love for the person that I'm engaging with? And once you start thinking about other people, about when you start thinking about self-sacrificing, it also means I'm not thinking about me at all. Like I can love cheeseburgers and nobody's around and I'm like, "Hell yeah, I'm about to sacrifice my gut for this damn cheeseburger." But when I'm thinking about the person next to me, or I'm thinking about others, it always has to be self-sacrificing. And that's the only way to love someone. It's the only, and it goes into your kids too. Self-sacrifice is the epicenter of love. You can't start loving someone without sacrificing oneself before them. And the same thing with God, right? You can't actually love God if you have not self-sacrificed your own flesh for Him. So how could you ever say I love this woman if you've yet to love God? People talk often about I love myself. You got to love yourself first. No, you freaking don't. Yourself is just flesh, bone, and meat. You don't gotta worry about those things. You just gotta worry about the inner soul. You gotta worry about that spirit that God has handed you. And if you are always self-sacrificing, God will reward you with all the things you need all the time. And if you're never being rewarded with anything, then you're just probably not self-sacrificing. You're probably not doing all the things you're told. You're probably not having any trust and any faith. Because I'll tell you this, I gave thousands of dollars to a charity a direct line charity to go buy a vehicle for people, and that was one of my most self-sacrificing things because my weakness is even though I'm not struggling with money, I have struggled with money the majority of my life, so feeling like if I lose this 3, 5, 6 thousand dollars to go help these people that can't even get a dollar in their pocket, then what happens to my family? And then at that moment, I barely had any trust that God was gonna take care of me, but I just sat there and I said, "You know what? If I trust in God and I self-sacrifice this money that I didn't even make, I just kinda came into, um, then what was this money for anyways if I'm not supposed to just hand this out?" So once I handed those things out, maybe I didn't receive $20,000 back from God later on down the road, but I received other things that I can account for that have been better. One, that feeling of poor kind of subsided after a couple of days. The idea that I was able, and once we got pictures of these kids smiling and doing that, those things left. That was my self-sacrifice, and I was vindicated in that self-sacrifice by being able to see what kind of joy I brought to other people, and it had nothing to do with me. Like, I didn't have to I didn't put my name on it. We didn't do any of those things. I didn't go out and visit them and say, "Hey, I'm the man who helped you buy," like, it's not said. I don't care. Nobody cares. It just that self-sacrifice right there showed, it may not it showed those kids that I love them, but it doesn't matter if I love them. It showed those kids that God was there and then God loved them, and he had people out here who were willing to, who already had much more than you, if we look at it from that perspective. I'm the richest man on earth. Why can't I let go of a couple $1,000s that I cured that I was gonna go buy my kids, dinosaur toys and freaking tablets with? Like, they don't need it, so, um, and then, you're really able to, give those things to your children too by letting them know, "Hey, like, this Christmas, we're not gonna spend $1,000 on toys, we're gonna spend $1,000 on these kids," and then show them the pictures of these kids and be like, "These kids are just like you, they just don't have a mommy and daddy like you and I like you have, like, we don't have these things." And we're able to give that self-sacrificing and I can show people around me what self-sacrificing love looks like, not for admonishment, but just so that way they can see that God's presence is in me, and this is what happens when you accept those things into your life, and you become more, um I mean, I guess you can say it's controlled. God asks us, you can be one or the other. You can be a slave to me, you can be a slave to righteousness, or you can be a slave to your sin. So that's the only control you have. Which part of slavery do you wanna be a part of? You know what I'm saying?
And I've been on both sides of that.
Again, like, control's out of our hands. We all know control is out of our hands. Each and every single person who's listened to this or has ever dealt with these things or talked about these things knows that there's no outcome that you can control. The only thing you can control is how you got to that outcome.
Mm.
Um, just and, like, going into, like, these things aren't like day 1, like, you just decided to do it. These things are the hardest things you'll ever have to do. You just say like, "Oh man, I couldn't even run 10 miles." And we're like, "Well, yeah, you could probably run 10 miles if you've never ran before. Your legs would be busted up, you'd be hurt." But you did it, right? But if you tried to practice doing a half mile every day for a week or every other day for a week and then increase that through time, all of a sudden you're running 10 miles with no problems, no broken legs. And it's the same thing when it comes back into trust and faith and control. Is just getting all these ideas and putting them into practice and failing at them a multitude of times, and starting with small failures. Like, I'm not going to start my big change is not going to be trying to fix my marriage where I'm probably going to fuck that up 28 times and then she's gone after the first time, right? Like, that's probably not where you need to start. But maybe you need to start with, maybe I don't need these cigarettes today because these cigarettes seem to be a way that, I've turned these cigarettes into my god. I can't even go off forth and do something until I smoke a cigarette. I can't even, we can go into pornography. It's like, "Oh man, I'm stressed out. Let me hit that pornography. Oh man, I'm stressed out. Let me hit that pornography. Oh man, that girl is pretty and I thought about that the other day. Well, I can't even take a nap till I get that pornography, dopamine hit," right? And what ends up happening is I think the greatest story I ever heard from, like, even when it comes to pornography or even dumb things we do is, that knife edge and blood, right? So the wolf keeps licking the Eskimo's knife that's been covered in blood, rabbit's blood over time, and it's just gonna keep licking it until that blood, that frozen blood's off the blade, then the blade starts cutting the wolf's tongue. And the wolf is a creature of habit, so it smells warm, hot blood, and it gets in frenzies and keeps licking it until that wolf's tongue is completely chopped up and it's no longer has any feeling in it, and then the wolf walks off and then bleeds to death and dies. And it's the same thing that we do when we put ourselves into these positions where we're trying to control ourselves or control our outcomes or control our lives by doing something that's completely sinful. We know it's not going to work, but we keep on doing it because it's just the thing that we produce that we pretend like helps us. And at the end of the day, we might not see it. Just like a cigarette, you might smoke it today, you might smoke it for 30 years, but at 31 years, all of a sudden you've got 6 different cancers and you're dying on the inside. It's just like walking off before you realize that you bled to death.
You know, mm, I was thinking about this as you're talking, and the masses amounts of us that habitually do that sin, whatever it may be, and like desperately want that to like go away, but you can't release it. You know,
Yeah.
like you think about, alcoholics, right? Like for me, I'm very much a recovering alcoholic. Not even afraid to say that. Like
Yeah.
I developed it and it was like
Rough.
the easiest, it's just the easiest thing, you know? And, and like where I've had to reach out to people and be like, hey man, because I'm like in a bad way. But, and then, you're like, I remember sitting and, just practically begging God just to release it from me, release it from me. And, but I was never asking like what I could do for him. First of all, it was always me just going to God and, just being like, do for me, do for me, do for me, do for
Yeah.
me. So, and not, and then, and then you always expect something to change. And what'll end up happening is the trials will get harder. They'll get harder. And until one day you're finally like, okay, like, I get it now. I get it now. And if you're trying to give up something, it's definitely a daily thing that you have to like be willing to give up. You have to like be able to just be like, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. And I would seal that with, I mean, if you better be careful with it though. Like I would bind myself to it. Be like, I am going to sacrifice this today. I will do that for you. You know, write it in blood and just go with it and just keep keep trying and keep trying to move forward, but don't continue to keep doing the same thing over and over again and then asking for help when you're not asking him what you can do for his kingdom.
I think that goes back into self-sacrificing again, you know? And it already tells you in the I mean, if we're going off the Bible, because I know not everybody that listens to this is gonna believe in God, and that's fine. Like, I mean, I believe you need God, and I believe that it's gonna be a terrible life without God. And all teachings and all morality comes from God. The book is many of thousands of years of age, and it still stands true to the test of time now. And if you were ever gonna link yourself to something that's true, then it would be the only thing that's infallible and the only thing we've yet to create infallibility to, except for people who try to cherry pick certain things about it. But um, without that being said, we all those things stand true to the test of time. And the reason why you're constantly going to fail is because you don't have anything that's solid, a mass that's solid to stand and link yourself to. So we always tend to like, we go to our brothers. Let's say we have alcoholic problems. Like I'm an alcoholic too myself. I'm always going to be recovering, but I'm always recovered. Yeah, I'm never going to pick these things up again. And I think the problem is we go into that same idea where like, okay, I'm the arbiter of my life. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quit alcohol because I'm strong enough. And if that was the case, if you personally were strong enough, then you would have never picked alcohol up to begin with. So you definitely are not strong enough. You can have your friends and your support system around you, but the problem is when you have a support system around you that has completely different beliefs, completely different thought processes, and they aren't aligned as a community together in the same thought process, then you have differing opinions, and then people come to you with their opinion and not a fact, or they come to you with with how they may have interpreted the world and things they do, and those things are tend to fail you because there's only one truth that actually exists out there. I am a recovering alcoholic. I'm a recovering pill addict. I'm a completely recovered, I guess I should say, recovered all those things. I'm a recovered porn addict. And the only reason why I can literally say those things is because I tried to fight them off a million times and could never figure out how to do it. I tried to leverage my children. I tried to be like, well, if you're going to be a good dad, you better get off this alcohol, which worked. But then I found myself into other things like using way too much medical marijuana, using this, doing that, going to the gym for umpteen amount of hours, even though the gym is good, but I turned it into bad because I used it too much. And we can go on and on and on. But the only thing that's ever kept me from doing those things again was me going and be like, okay, I'm not strong enough to do these things, obviously, because I'm doing them. And the only other avenue I have personally was to go to God and be like, listen, I'm freaking ashamed of myself. And I literally can't do this stuff myself. And none of the things I've ever done in my life, now that I really put those together, I've ever done by myself. I've always it's always been you standing next to me. And the reason why I haven't gotten the greatest gifts that I've ever wanted in life, or the reason why I haven't gotten even more peace, is because I depended on myself and depended on other people more than I depended on the only thing that really mattered. Well, when you and even in Philippians, with the Philippian church in the Bible, we go back to there. It even talks about how your church, which is not a building, it's the people you surround yourself with,
Hmm.
that has to be in line with the same belief system you have. So for me, my entire life, I've been Christianized. I've been in the churches and da 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 da. I can't never say I've been an atheist. I definitely moved towards the agnostic portion of things.
Hmm.
I couldn't deny that there was something out there, but now I can't deny that God is, Christ is the one true God. He's the only God, and it sounds fairy talish to a lot of people. But when you really start telling yourself the truth and you really start buckling down and looking at these things, you really can't find a hole, and everything makes freaking sense. You can break yourself of every little thing out there. The problem is those things do become God. Like Zins become God, medical marijuana becomes God, pornography becomes God, shorts on the internet, Facebook, any social media you get to, and you just sit there and spend 3 or 4 hours a day distracted, that becomes your God. Anytime you have an issue or an illness or this or that, you're gonna go back. And it's just like, us military members when it comes to training. And you spoke about this right in the very beginning, and I wanted to say something about it, but didn't. It wasn't time for me to hit it yet. But it was when we do anything, it doesn't matter if you're doing basketball, football, baseball, shooting, combat, whatever it is, baking, you are taught how to do these things, and it depends on how much of that teaching, how much of that training you've done, that when the hardest thing in life comes back and hits you, you're gonna revert back to your highest level of training. So if my highest level of training is, let's just say, the church, and they handed me the gospel my entire life, but I never read it for myself, and let's just say there's falsities or things that don't make sense in there, to me, it's gonna be easier for me to walk away from God, and it's gonna be easier for me not to do the things that I'm supposed to do because my training is at the very lowest possible level possible. And so all those things in your life, if you haven't trained yourself for these moments, if you're not looking for avenues to create training for yourself to grow in any of the avenues, whether you're looking for God, you're looking to be better at money, or you're looking to be a better, if it's morally, I'm always going to point to God. But if we're talking about finances or fitness or whatever the other things are, anytime like, say I get injured in the gym and it's my knee, if I don't understand like all the nuances and all this biology and all the other things that go into that, I can't properly address my knee pain. It could be like broken, or it could just be because I didn't warm up my hips properly. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I'm gonna revert back to that weakest or the highest level of training that I have, and that usually stunts our growth and stunts our abilities to move forward because we don't train further and further and further along. So it's super important that you either if you're about God and you want to be about God, dive into that Bible and read it for yourself. If you're trying to figure out how to be a better leader, then if you're picking up a cigarette or picking up the beer at the end of the night, then you're already wrong. There's no reason why you can't have that beer and that book, or there's no reason why you can't put that beer down and reward yourself with that beer after you've done finished training yourself on something that you need work on.
Mm. for anybody that's listening, and this is some good wisdom to be soaking up right now. Because if it even encourages you just to, like, even download, say, the Bible app on your phone, or, you start Googling stuff, there's there's answers out there for what you seek. And I'm not saying it's all gonna come to you all at once. And I'm really glad that this conversation, turned this direction, Dan, I really am. And, because I it's such a beautiful thing when people, and I know that sounds kind of cheesy to say as a dude, but it really is, a beautiful thing when you finally do make that acknowledgement, and you do, um, acknowledge Christ is king. And once you do, things will start to make sense, and it'll just take time, but you have to be invested into it. Just like if you wanted to learn anything else, the moment you want to believe in something, or there's an inkling inside of you, that's already the works inside going, let me just check this out a little bit and see what's up. I mean, so I just want to throw that out there. Me myself, I'm newer to my faith, and very much like you, Dan, agnostic, and just not really sure, like, once I acknowledged, and this is even before baptism, it was like the doors that opened. It's like you hold yourself to a higher standard, and you hold yourself to a higher standard because you don't want to let your father down. Yeah, I've heard that used. There was I can't remember the name of the ministry, but if you think about it, how many of us grew up with, fathers, parents, or whatever, that you could not take. Like, you could take, if you took that to your actual parents, you're like, hey, this is what I did. The consequences could have been, maybe they were apologetic. Maybe they were like unleashing hell on your ass, and you just, you're tortured for it forever. And where you can take and go to our Father and be like, listen, man, I messed up, like, I'm broken, and help me get through this moment. Help point me in the direction so that way I can do better works for you and be a better father, or be a better partner. You'll handle relationships entirely different. You know, and I know there's a lot of ragging that goes on when it comes to Christianity, and we're called hypocrites because we don't all toe the line perfectly. And there's a big difference between, maybe that's a rabbit hole we don't want to
Oh
really go
yeah,
down.
we can go
Yeah,
crazy on that.
we don't want to go down
That's
that
for
rabbit.
another time.
Yeah. But, the main point of what I wanted to say there was, this is really, really good for somebody that's, coming to Christ, or is, like, on that fence. This is something really good to listen in on, because, we did not intend for this conversation to go this direction, just so everybody knows.
Matt didn't, but God told me it had to. He's been beating me up for the past couple of days. He said, "Don't deny me in front of men." He said, "You've done it plenty of times. Don't you ever do it again." I said, "Yes, sir." I can't even talk about personal growth without injecting God into it, because I would have never, from the birth of myself till now, I've been attached to God, and I had no idea, but I've always felt his presence. I can never, ever, ever, ever will I ever say I've never felt it. I've felt him say, "That's not what I have intended for you, but if you do it, I'm here." When we were in Afghanistan, I felt his presence the entire time. I would do stupid shit, and he'd be like, "I'm here, but I'm not gonna protect you from your stupidity." And and like I said, even from my story, I've always had God with me. I've always felt him, but I've always ignored him.
Mhm.
And then when I was in a bathroom with a gun in my mouth and I asked for God to come down and take this from me because I had no more strength and I couldn't do it anymore and I was about to pull the trigger and just say, "Fuck it." If you're, and I didn't say, "If you're there, you better do it now." It was like, "I just can't, God. Like, I just need I'm just done. I can't do this. I don't wanna kill myself, but I'm stuck. I've got nowhere to go." And it took that moment where I felt God actually put his hand on my shoulder, and I felt a peace and a presence that I just never I guess I can't say I've never, but I just haven't felt in an extremely long time. And it took me 10 more years to reconfigure myself. So it wasn't an overnight process. It wasn't, I felt God, so I'm changing now. I still fought him, even though I felt him and heard him loudly, not like an actual voice, but there was just nothing I could do to control the thought behavior I had. And then the amount of peace that came upon me after I already had the gun loaded, it was in my mouth and no one was around, and I could have just ended it at 1 in the morning for no reason. And it
Yeah.
just took all that time for me to I might have been at the bottom of the barrel, but I felt myself climbing out of the barrel for 10 years. I can't do anything, Matt, without professing God's love for me and his existence.
That's what we're intended, man. That's
Right.
what we're intended. Uh, That's why we do this, That's why we do this. That's why, you
Mhm.
know, I don't think there may be some hot topics that need to be discussed, but at the end of the day, our belief is we're doing this for him
Yeah.
and to help everyone, you know.
Right.
We do hope that you do come to Christ. We really do. We're not going to keep hammering on that, but the wisdom that you're getting, bestowed upon you is just years of trials and tribulations and what life does look like when you deviate from that path
Yep.
that's intended. And um and if you are in that agnostic state, you know, dig deeper, dig deeper. The answer will come. It'll come to you. But
Search it.
you've got to search for it. Just keep searching and intentionally search. You know, it's not like a magic eye book.
Nope.
Right? Remember those?
I do.
I
They
could
were
never
fun.
see the damn thing.
Me either.
Like, there's nothing in there. Maybe I'm colorblind. And they're like, no, there's a whole castle. I'm like, huh?
Well, I'll see it. Yeah, again, you need God. We're not telling you to go. We're not gonna. Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm not gonna beat you over the head with it. You've heard it a million times. You know it. You hear it in your own heart. But nothing that we're saying here is not true, right? So even if you don't apply God to it, every little thing that we do, we're applying God to do it. So if you start doing it and then your life becomes ultimately better and you start maneuvering through life in a different way, then what other choice do you have than to hang your worldly flesh up and follow God because you're already doing it. But now you have to get in deeper into your truth and ask yourself, now am I doing this for myself? And if I am, what more great things can come from this if I'm doing it for others unto him?
I just had just this thought that came to me, and I wonder how many people would deny this still. There's always well, you should just do good by others just because you don't need God to do that. Well, you yes, you do. Yes,
Right,
you
right,
do. Otherwise, you would be straight evil. So
right.
that's the reason why they say it's easier to, it takes a lot of faith to be an atheist.
It does, dude. It's crazy.
So what if that's just God still working through you, even though you don't want to, even though you're denouncing him? But are you really denouncing him? Are you really?
Yeah, my question to all the atheists, because I definitely have some on my page, and which is fine. Like I don't have hatred for atheists.
Oh, no, no,
I don't
no.
want to say pity either. I don't pity them. I'm just prepared to wait for them to come to the same understanding. Well, I had an atheist guy tell me the other day. He said, I don't believe you need to have God to have a fulfilling life. And so my question is, what is fulfilling? Like, because
Mm.
at the end of the day, you're like, oh, you should just be good to people. I'm like, okay, so what happens when someone does wrong to you? Should you do bad to them now? And if that's the case, and that's the opposite of what God tells me to do. Every time you do bad to others, like revenge, do you tend to become at peace after that? Or do you still feel that same way? You just now are hiding from that individual because you don't want to have to deal with him anymore. And then
No.
you create separation between you and someone else when you could have had understanding between you and someone else. And my biggest problem with atheists is if I'm a Christian and I'm a believer and I believe in God and you don't, that's fine. Why do you care so much if I do? It doesn't affect you anyway, shape or form. Right. So the idea I have to come to back to every atheist, because it's always the exact same question is what made you not believe in God? And usually they come back, well, I was a Christian for umpteen years. And I'm like, yes, that's not what I asked you. I asked you, is what made you turn away from God? And my second piece is when did you actually read the entire Bible? When did you come by and actually have a good communication with another brother or another sister in those things? Because atheists tend to do what all of us do, right? I think you and I were talking about this before we were recording, is we tend to look for things that confirm what we already believe instead of looking for things to disprove what we believe. And every single
Yeah.
time I've had a conversation with an atheist, they always cherry pick verses and then send things to me. And then I have to go and break them down to context and then tell them what they're actually telling me is not what they think it is. And I'm like, yeah, obviously I haven't read the Bible. Yeah, you obviously don't have an understanding of what the Bible is. And you've just, you have your bias towards it, your confirmation bias towards these things.
I hate the cherry picking,
Me
man.
too.
I really hate the cherry picking of scripture because it's like when somebody argues with just by doing that, to me, one, it's very passive aggressive and it's everybody has a different interpretation. Well, I shouldn't say everybody has a different interpretation, but there's going to be different interpretations of that scripture. And some of those scriptures can be used as weapons. I mean, you can really weaponize one of those.
Hell yeah.
And
The Pharisees did it.
oh yeah, yeah.
That's what the Old to New Testament was. The Old Testament was showing how God's word can be perverted for man's use, and then the New Testament is showing you where Jesus came down to say, "You're all wrong, and I'm gonna show you that I'm the correct one by passing my own trial and getting myself killed by you, so I can open the doors to heaven because you obviously can't do it yourself." And the cherry picking, the problem with the cherry picking is it causes people who are on the fence to get further off the fence to the opposite side because they're being given this buzzword now called misinformation.
Yep. And just so you're clear, like if you're using, I mean, if you're steering people away, you're not doing the works of God. You are you're in a bad way. You need to stop.
Yeah. Well, that's not truth, right? Because we talk about truth all the time. If you don't actually have full knowledge, full actual knowledge of scripture, even if you're a Muslim talking about your own Quran, even if you're a lawyer talking about law, even if you're a doctor talking about anything, if you don't have the knowledge and if you don't have the actual like continuing knowledge and continuing search of these things, then you're never actually being truthful. You're just being misguided, and then you're misguiding others. So my plight to people, if you don't actually know or you're not fully there, then you can't try to persuade someone to move away from something that you didn't have knowledge of in the first place by pretending that you had knowledge. And that goes back into being not self-sacrificing and loving. That goes into loving yourself so much that you have to be right about what you think. And that goes into your marriage, and if it's not even about God, is sometimes you're just into yourself, and you just can't it's not about my wife winning, it's about getting to the compromise, but not also the compromise, but what's best for the family in itself. So, I don't let my wife win arguments. When she's correct, and when I'm wrong, I bow my head to her and say, "You are correct," and then I fix those things I'm wrong about, and same thing goes with her, and same thing goes with my kids. We don't punish our children, we correct our children, and I think that when we start looking at things like how do we correct issues instead of how do we punish problems, we start you can't even start doing that until you start correcting yourself in all those things that you need to correct others in.
Hmm.
It's beautiful, man. Truth, 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 truth always.
Yes.
Once you tell the truth and you have faith, everything you say is true. You know what I'm saying? And then
Right?
you don't have any need to control anything because it's all uncontrollable. It's all in someone else's hands that's not yours, and you don't have to worry about it because you don't have control over, 1, other people. Like I said, you can have the best life in the world, you can be the best husband in the world and follow everything God gives you, but your spouse next to you can and is fallible of those things that you are fallible of. And then you can't control that person's outcome. The only thing you can do is love that person the way you're supposed to and try to, correct the actions that they're taking in the most loving way possible. But you have to be willing to sacrifice yourself on the altar.
Mhm.
And that's the same thing, right? It's so crazy we talk about this, Matt, because it's like, okay, well, how do I get rid of all these bad outcomes? I got out of the military, or I got out of this, or I got out of a bad divorce, or I got out of this thing. And it's so funny because I just had a conversation with a guy I was in the military with. I hadn't spoken to him in I don't even know how many years it's been, but he just randomly hit me up today, and he was like, "Man, how you doing?" And I told him, I said, I'm doing great." And I just kind of gave him like a swift summarization of what I've been through for the past like 10 years, whatever it's been since we spoke. And the only thing he said to me is, "Man, I'm really happy to hear that. I just got divorced in March, and it's been killing me, and I don't know where to go from here." And so the only thing I could tell him is what we talk about now. Like, "Hey, man, I've been through these things. Here's the list of crap I dealt with the past 10 years, just to be on the same level with you. And there's always a better route outside of this, brother. You have this outside. You have this in you." And so right now, I'm trying to get him to admit that all of it's his fault. Not whether it is or it isn't, I just want him to get around the idea that when we put all that blame on ourselves and we're truthful with ourselves, it doesn't matter whether she was a harlot. You know, so those things don't matter. Did you choose to marry her? Did you follow God, or did you follow that plan that you had set in front of you? Were you the best version of yourself when you met her? And did you stop being a good version, or vice versa, or whatever the case is? You know what I'm saying? Did we let go of thinking about love and think about, all right, now that I'm married, where do I go next? I got to get this money. I got to do that. I got to do this. And those things became your God. And so now it's hard to actually revert back to what you know is true and real and apply those things. And sooner or later, it becomes one of these sad situations where you broke the covenant, or she broke the covenant, or you guys decided to divorce each other, or whatever the case may be. And it causes these questions that to be asked again.
Yeah. I mean, it takes a lot to own your side of it. Like, it takes a lot. Like, there's even like, I'll catch myself still be, like, blaming,
Yeah, me too.
and I'm like, "No, no, no." And I'm not saying, like, you're gonna be perfect at this,
Uh-uh.
and I'm not, like, the whole point behind this entire conversation is the fact that it's a trial that you constantly have to go through.
Yeah.
All of it is, and when you're asking, for forgiveness and you're owning your side of things, be like, "Well, hey, yeah, but where did I go wrong? Like, where did I fail?" You know? You can't blame the other person. You can understand,
Right.
you can't blame them though.
Right. Exactly.
Like I and if more if more parents that got divorced did that, then you would have a much better relationship with your kids. Your kids would understand what reconciliation really looks like. Okay. And my ex-wife had tried to do this numerous times, and it's like it's a roller coaster. Sometimes we're cool, sometimes we're not. It's more like it's a what's in it for me kind of situation.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
we
yeah.
need to get something done. Yeah. But the more that you can take a look back at those relationships and be like, no, no, this is on me too. It's not just on them. They own their part. Whatever trials and struggles they're going through and they're beating themselves up, or if they're blaming you, then whatever, that's on them. But you've got to be in control of your own, and you do have to take ownership. And so that way you know exactly what you did wrong in that relationship, and carrying into the next one, you're not doing the same exact things.
Right.
You're bound. You're like, man, I destroyed my entire life because I was an idiot in all these areas. And the outcome could have been a lot different, but it's not going to be that outcome anymore.
Right.
So it's going to be the outcome that I'm going to have that I've learned from all these mistakes that I've made. And I'm going to trust God and I'm going to follow his path. And when you do that, things get a whole lot easier.
It's a self-revive like in a video game, bro. You went down. You better have a self-revive on you. Better be able to revive that self. Get back into the world of battle royale, you know what I'm saying?
Dude, I suck so bad that nobody gets the self revives. They just make sure that
Yeah,
I
yeah,
get them. They're like, no, we don't even need that. You get that thing. Like,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
Not the video game master.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm the revive master. I got you.
There you go. There you go. I do want to leave us with this, and that you know, we as Christians, we do owe it to God. Um, I think we remove him from a lot of our everyday process, and we make excuses as to why we're doing it, right? Like I didn't have time or whatever. In reality, you know, remember those small instances when you can sit down and take the time, you know, whether it's 5 minutes in your car, um, or you just finally get some peace. You know, you go outside and stand under a tree, and just, you know, acknowledge him and um, do good by his word. Always strive for better, um, and be honest. And be honest. I myself still struggle with that. And not that I think God's going to come down and smack me upside the head, even though sometimes I say that would probably be a good idea for him to do. Um, but I even struggle with, you know, being honest with the Father. So if you're in that same realm, um, you're not alone, but let's be better. Let's be better.
Absolutely. Together
Together.
and always forward.
That's right. Always forward. All right.
God bless y'all.